For the first 3 seconds, the world froze around a single scene. Bright mall lights, stunned shoppers, and a billionaire mafia boss standing still as stone while 2 identical women faced him. One wore a soft, timid expression. The other breathed like she had run through fire. Security guards tightened their stance. People raised their phones. And in the center of it all, a little girl clutched her father's coat and whispered, "Daddy, why does she look like Miss Elena?" A heartbeat, a breath held, and then humiliation struck like a slap across the world. Because the woman Damian trusted to raise his daughter, the woman he led into the Blackwood mansion, the woman he had begun to love, wasn't who he thought she was. And in that single moment, everything shifted. This is Nanny's Folktales, where African, American, and Korean folktales meet real-life lessons that change how you see the world. If you're new here, hit that subscribe button right now and help us reach 1,000 subscribers. Your support keeps these stories alive. Now let's begin. The echo of disbelief rippled through the Chicago Ridge Mall like a wave. Damian Blackwood stood in his immaculate ebony coat, jaw clenched hard enough to crack granite. His empire commanded fear, senators bowed, cartels negotiated through trembling translators, but nothing prepared him for this moment. Nothing prepared him for the living nightmare of realizing he had been deceived right under his watchful, brutal eyes. Before him stood Lila Stone, the quiet nanny he hired, small, gentle, soft-spoken, the girl who moved through rooms like a feather in the wind. But beside her stood another woman. The same face, the same eyes, the same trembling lips, but different fire. Lila. And the world around them began to tilt. Shoppers whispered, "Twins. Is this a prank? Wait, Blackwood. The mafia boss. Oh my God, is this real?" Phones came out. Cameras flashed. The humiliation widened. Aria, Damian's little girl, buried her face into his coat, confused and bright-eyed. "Daddy, why are there 2 Miss Elenas?" Damian didn't answer. He couldn't. His voice was a locked vault. The guards swarmed forward instinctively. "Sir, do you need us to extract?" No, his tone sliced the air. No one touches them. Even in chaos, he remained the king. But inside, a storm churned. Pain, betrayal, confusion, and something far worse, heartbreak. He took a single step forward. Shoppers parted like waves before a dark tide. The twins stood frozen, and for a moment, Damian saw the collapse of the illusion he'd unknowingly leaned on for weeks. His voice came out low, controlled, but trembling beneath the weight of truth. "Which one of you," he asked, "has been living in my home?" A collective gasp filled the mall. Elena stepped back, terrified. Lila stepped forward, unable to hide the instinct to protect. I'm sorry," she whispered, breath shaking. "Damian, I can explain." He flinched as if struck. She had never said his name like that before. Soft, familiar, intimate. It peeled open wounds he didn't even know he had. She sounded like the woman he'd begun to trust. The woman who made Aria laugh again. The woman who had softened the shadows in the Blackwood mansion. Which meant she was the one. "You're the one," he said quietly, voice heavy with the realization. "You're the one I let into my daughter's life." Lila swallowed, tears clinging to her lashes. "I didn't plan for it. I swear." "You lied." His tone was ice. "And you made my little girl love you." Elena finally found her voice. Please don't be angry with her. I was in an accident. She was only trying to help me keep the help." Damian barked, not loudly, but sharply enough that the crowd flinched. "You call impersonating you in my home helping?" Lila stepped forward again, shaking. "I wasn't trying to trick you. I was trying to protect her. And myself." "Protect?" He laughed once, humorless, wounded. "From what? Who are you running from?" Lila's eyes darted around. Shadows hid in corners of the mall, men watching, moving like predators. Damian noticed immediately. His instincts sharpened. Someone else was hunting her. Someone connected to his world. Someone she feared more than him. But the humiliation burned too bright for him to focus on that yet. He turned to Aria, kneeling so their eyes met. His voice softened, breaking in places. "Sweetheart, which one is your Miss Elena?" Aria blinked through tears and pointed at Lila. That single gesture carved through his defenses. It was Lila, the imposter, the liar, the woman who tended to his daughter with warmth he had forgotten how to give, and the woman he was beginning, dangerously, to fall for. He rose slowly, face unreadable. Guards, he said quietly. Escort my daughter to the car. No, Arya cried. Daddy, don't take her away. Please. Please don't take Miss Elena. Lila's chest cracked open hearing the child's sobs. Elena covered her mouth. Damian forced himself not to look back. If he wavered now, the Empire watching him, these strangers with their phones, the enemies hidden in the shadows, would see weakness. The mall doors closed behind Arya as the guards carried her out. Her cries echoed long after she was gone. Lila stood trembling in the silence that followed. Damian, I never meant to hurt her. Or you. He stared at her with a coldness that barely masked the hurt underneath. You walked into my home under a lie. You touched my daughter under a lie. You made me. He caught the sentence before it escaped. But the truth hung there. Heavy. Dangerous. You made me feel again. He looked away quickly, ashamed at how deep the betrayal cut. Elena stepped in, voice soft. She didn't do it for money. She didn't do it for gain. Please believe that. Then why? Damian asked, voice breaking for the first time. Why pretend to be you? Why lie to me? Lila clenched her jaw. Her eyes flickered over his shoulder, toward the shadowed men closing in. Because if I didn't hide, I would have been dead. The answer hit him like a slow-building explosion. Danger. Threat. Blood in the air. Something he recognized all too well. And suddenly, Damian saw fear, not deceit, in her eyes. But before he could question her again, a thick voice echoed from the far end of the mall. There she is. Lila stiffened. Damian's eyes narrowed, and the shadows stepped forward. It was no longer just a humiliation in a mall. It was the beginning of something else. Something deadly. Something that would unravel everything he thought he knew. The memory returned to Lila like a slow-burning fever, one that didn't ask permission before swallowing her whole. Long before the mall, long before the mansion, long before a billionaire mafia boss called her a liar in front of the world, there were just two sisters struggling to breathe inside a life that never made room for them. Elena and Lila Stone were born in a cramped Bronx apartment that shook whenever the trains passed. Their mother worked 3 jobs. Their father vanished before their 2nd birthday. And from the start, life made their roles painfully clear. Elena was the gentle one. Lila was the fighter. Elena dreamed of soft lives, books, warm lights, a job where her voice didn't tremble. She wanted peace. She wanted normal. She wanted a world where kindness wasn't a luxury. Lila, on the other hand, wanted survival. She learned to defend herself before she learned to pray. She protected Elena in school hallways, in cramped buses, in nights when their mother didn't come home until dawn. And somewhere along the way, Lila began taking jobs that blurred the line between legal and necessary. Delivery runs, night shifts, favors for men in neighborhoods where even police walked in pairs. That was where trouble began. And that was where her path crossed with the shadows of Damian Blackwood's world, without either of them knowing. Deception. Elena had applied for a nanny position posted anonymously on a high-end domestic agency site. The pay was unbelievable. The expectations were strict. Privacy was required. But she needed a new start after a lifetime of being overlooked. When Elena walked into the agency's interview room, she remembered whispering, "Lila, should I even try? Girls like us don't work for families like that." Lila cupped her face gently, rough hands softened for the one person she'd die for. "Try. The world already said no to us too many times. Let's collect one yes." That yes came 2 weeks later. Damian Blackwood, though his name wasn't disclosed then, chose Elena after reviewing hundreds of profiles. "A gentle heart," the agency representative said. "That's exactly what this client needs." But just 3 days before Elena was supposed to start, everything went wrong. A truck ran a red light. The collision shattered Elena's world. Broken ribs, bruised lungs, the kind of injury that stole weeks of breath. Lila found her on the ground, her twins' blood mixing with street water. The hospital demanded payment up front. Life didn't pause to let them grieve. Elena's pleading voice whispered through the oxygen mask, "Please, don't let me lose that opportunity. Lila, please. We need this job." Lila held her hand. She knew what Elena was really asking. Please don't let poverty win. Please don't let everything fall apart again. So when the agency called to confirm Elena's arrival at the Blackwood mansion, Lila made a decision that rearranged the rest of her life. "I'll go in your place. Just until you heal. No one has to know." Elena protested, coughing, terrified. "Lila, he's a billionaire. His home, His world isn't safe for people like you. People like you. People who had survived too much. People who carried danger in their shadows. Lila kissed her forehead and whispered, "I'll be invisible. I promise." But Lila Stone had never been invisible a day in her life. The Blackwood mansion rose like a kingdom carved from cold stone. When Lila stepped through its gates wearing Elena's clothes, clutching Elena's bag, repeating Elena's soft tone, she felt the weight of wealth press against her skin. Bodyguards watched her. Cameras followed her. Silence engulfed her. But the first person she met wasn't Damian. It was Arya, a small girl with curls like her late mother's and eyes too old for her age. She peeked from behind a marble pillar and whispered, "Hi. Are you my new nanny?" Lila knelt, remembering Elena's instructions. "Speak gently. Move softly. Don't scare her." But Lila's voice broke as she said, "Yes, sweetheart. I'm here for you." Arya's small hand slid into hers like trust offered freely. A trust Lila feared she didn't deserve. Damian Blackwood entered Lila's world 3 days later. She didn't hear him approach. Few ever did. He was a shadow shaped like a man, armor built from trauma, and wars no one in the outside world would ever read about. Rumors said he ran the East Coast's most feared syndicate, that he controlled silence like other men controlled language, that losing his wife had carved out what was left of his heart. When Lila turned and saw him for the first time, her breath caught. Not from fear, she knew danger when she saw it. She recognized grief even faster. She bowed her head, trying to mimic Elena's softness. "Good evening, sir." Damian didn't respond at first. He merely studied her, eyes scanning, measuring, dissecting. Lila wondered if he could already see through her disguise. But instead, he said quietly, "Arya likes you." That was his test. Lila passed, but she didn't know yet there would be others. Hidden beneath her new routine, cleaning, cooking, singing Arya to sleep, Lila sensed something else lurking in the mansion's walls. A secret mission. It wasn't hers. It was Damian's. He watched everyone. The staff whispered about traitors. About someone leaking information. About Damian setting traps in silence. Lila didn't belong in that world, but she'd stepped into the crosshairs anyway. Meanwhile, the danger from her past grew closer. The men she once ran small jobs for, men entangled in syndicates that touched Damian's empire, wanted something she no longer had. They searched apartments, questioned neighbors, threatened her mother. And Lila did the only thing she could. She hid in the one place criminals feared to trespass, the Blackwood mansion. But each passing day made pretending harder. Arya grew attached. Damian softened, subtly, reluctantly, painfully. And Lila found herself wanting a life she was never meant to have. One evening, after Lila helped Arya paint stars on black paper, Damian stopped at the doorway, watching them with a gaze that cut and healed at the same time. "You're different," he said. Lila's heart stuttered. "Different how, sir?" He hesitated. Then, Elena seemed timid during her interview. "You carry a different fire." Panic pricked her skin. She forced a small smile. "Maybe your home brings out the best in people." Damian studied her before turning away, or reveals what they never wanted anyone to see. His words lingered like a prophecy, a warning, a beginning. Because slowly, dangerously, Damian Blackwood was starting to feel again. And Lila Stone, hiding behind her sister's identity, was losing the ability to remain invisible. The nights in the Blackwood mansion grew heavier as winter thickened over Manhattan, wrapping the world in a cold silence that felt almost deliberate. It was during these nights, when the house slept and even the guards softened their footsteps, that Lila found tiny pockets of peace she never expected. Peace in the form of a little girl's laughter echoing down gold-trimmed hallways. Peace in the warmth of a billionaire mafia boss slowly remembering how to breathe. But peace is the most fragile luxury in a world built on lies. And Lila lived inside a lie that grew larger every day. It began with the tests, small at first, subtle, easy to miss until they weren't. One morning, Damian stood at the foot of the staircase, watching Lila tie Arya's shoelaces. His voice came calm, but Lila felt the storm beneath it. "Elena," he said, "Arya told me you confronted one of the guards yesterday. Something about someone following her." Lila froze. That happened. But it wasn't something Elena, timid, soft Elena, would have done. It was Lila's instinct firing the moment she saw a stranger lingering near the gate. She swallowed. "I wanted to keep her safe." Damian's eyes narrowed slightly. Not many people talk back to my security. Lila didn't know what to say. He dismissed the moment with a nod, but she felt it. Another test passed, another lie layered over truth. The second test came 2 days later. Damian walked into the kitchen at dawn, surprising her while she cooked Aria's pancakes. She had removed her wig for a moment, just a second to breathe, revealing her natural curls. Elena always wore her straight. Damian leaned on the marble counter, studying her silently before saying, "New hairstyle." Panic crawled up her spine. She fumbled with the wig, forcing a smile. Trying something different. He didn't argue, but his eyes lingered too long. The tests were getting closer. Sharper. More dangerous. And then came the third one. The one that changed everything. Damian invited her to accompany him and Aria to a charity gala. A quiet event, he said. Nothing overwhelming. Just a fundraiser in Midtown. Lila knew billionaires didn't understand the difference between quiet and intimidating, but she agreed because Aria wanted her there. The moment she stepped into the ballroom wearing Elena's simple cream dress, conversations paused. Women whispered. Men stared too long. Lila hated attention. It exposed the cracks in her disguise. But Aria ran to her, hugging her waist. Damian watched the gesture, an unreadable softness coloring his expression. Halfway through the night, a senator's wife approached Damian with a smile too polished to be sincere. "Is this your nanny?" "She's different from the woman I saw during the agency interviews." Lila's heart dropped. Damian's response stunned her. He placed a gentle but firm hand on her back and said, "People evolve when they're treated right." It was the first time he defended her publicly. It was also the moment Lila realized he had been watching everything far more closely than he let on. The bond deepened quietly after that. It was in the way Damian lingered in rooms longer when she was in them. The way Lila found herself listening for his footsteps even when she didn't want to. The way Aria placed both their hands together during bedtime stories without understanding the meaning of it. But danger was rising beneath the tenderness. Lila first noticed it in the back alley behind a grocery store. She had walked there to breathe, to drop the nanny act for a few minutes, when she heard the low murmur of 2 men behind a dumpster. "She's in the Blackwood mansion." "Are you sure?" "Positive. The boss wants her alive." Lila's heart slammed against her ribs. They were closer than ever. She ran home, but she didn't tell Damian. How could she? She wasn't supposed to exist in his home in the first place. Instead, she doubled down on protecting Aria, checking windows, scanning crowds, memorizing guard rotations. But even her caution couldn't hide the tension in her shoulders. Damian noticed. One night, after Aria fell asleep, he stopped Lila in the dim hallway. "You've been looking over your shoulder," he said quietly. She swallowed. "I'm fine." "No," he said, stepping closer. "You're not." His voice was low, his presence overwhelming, yet warm in a way that tempted her to trust him. "Tell me what's wrong, Elena." Her breath hitched. That name burned her every time he said it. "Nothing is wrong," she whispered. He cupped her chin gently, forcing her eyes to meet his. "You forget who I am. I built an empire listening to lies. Yours is the first one I don't want to hear." Her heart trembled. But before she could reply, a noise echoed from Aria's room. A thud, followed by a soft cry. They both ran. Aria sat awake, trembling, saying she saw a shadow outside her window. Guards searched the grounds, but found nothing. Damian held his daughter close, his voice shaking for the first time in years. When he finally looked at Lila over Aria's small head, something passed between them. A silent vow, a shared fear, a growing connection neither of them could deny. But with every moment of closeness came a drop of dread. Lila knew the truth would destroy everything she was beginning to love. And the enemies hunting her were no longer moving quietly. They started leaving signs, scratched symbols near the mansion's gate, cryptic messages sent anonymously, and once a bullet casing left on Damian's car. Damian's world tightened. His staff grew suspicious, and whispers spread through the mansion. Who is she really? She's hiding something. She came just before the threats began. Coincidence? The tension snapped one evening when Damian's most trusted advisor, Rowan, approached him in his office. "Sir," he said gravely, "we have a problem with your nanny." Damian's pen stopped mid-signature. "What kind of problem?" Rowan placed 2 photographs on the table. Grainy surveillance images. Lila running from 2 men in a Bronx alley. Lila fighting one of them off with brutal efficiency. Lila looking nothing like the soft, timid woman Damian believed he hired. The truth was knocking. Hard. Mercilessly. Rowan said what Damian couldn't bring himself to voice. She might be the reason enemies have been closing in. Damian's fingers tightened around the photograph, knuckles turning white. Confusion. Pain. Fear for Arya. Fear of betrayal. Fear of what this meant for the feelings he had worked so hard to bury. He dismissed Rowan with a quiet command, but after the door closed, Damian let the mask fall. He whispered into the empty room. "Who are you, Elena?" But she wasn't Elena, and the men hunting her would strike soon. And Damian's heart, already pulled open by the woman he didn't fully know, was careening toward a shattering he could no longer stop. Thin, cold, and relentless, drumming against the mirrored windows of the Blackwood private hall where Damian had summoned every ranking member of his empire. The long marble room glittered beneath chandeliers, its silence thick as a held breath. Guards lined the walls. Advisors murmured in corners. And at the center stood Damian Blackwood, a storm wrapped in a tailored suit. He had called this gathering to address the escalating attacks on his mansion. The traitors hiding within his circle. The enemies closing in on his daughter. But beneath all that, he needed answers about the woman who had seeped into the cracks of his guarded heart. Lila, still wearing Elena's identity, stood between two guards, wrists trembling though unbound. She could feel the entire empire watching her, judging her, preparing to crush her if Damian gave the order. Across the hall, Elena stood pale and terrified, brought here by Damian's command. Her eyes begged Lila to forgive her for being the cause of the deception. But Lila didn't blame her. She never had. Damian raised a hand, silencing the entire room. "Before we begin," he said, voice echoing through the hall, "I want the truth. All of it. Tonight." A murmur rippled. His authority sharpened the air. He turned to Lila. "Who are you?" The question was simple. The weight behind it was not. Lila inhaled shakily. "My name is Lila Stone. I'm Elena's twin sister. Not the woman I hired." His voice cut bone. No, her voice cracked. "I stepped in only because Elena was injured. I never meant to deceive you. I just wanted to help her keep the job." Damian's jaw tightened, the betrayal flickering across his face. "And the danger that followed you here? That, too, was an attempt to help?" Lila looked down. The shame was suffocating. But Rowan, his advisor, interrupted sharply, throwing a file onto the table. Photographs spilled across the marble. Lila fighting in alleys, running from dangerous men, hiding in shadows. "She is connected to Vargas," Rowan announced. "The cartel rival responsible for the last 2 attacks on your estate." Gasps filled the hall. Elena cried out. "That's not true. They targeted Lila. She didn't work for them." Rowan scoffed. "But she brought them here." Damian's gaze turned thunderous, though he kept his composure. "Lila," he said quietly, "did you know Vargas?" Lila looked up slowly, tears threatening. "Yes, but not the way you think." "Explain," he commanded. Her voice trembled but grew stronger with each word. "Years ago, when we were struggling, I ran delivery jobs. I didn't know they were for Vargas. When I tried to stop, he threatened Elena. He said if I disappeared, he would come for her. And when I hid in your mansion, it bought her time." The room fell into a stunned silence. She continued, voice breaking. "I didn't come here to betray you. I came here to survive." Damian's eyes softened for a fraction of a second, then hardened again. "Survival doesn't justify deception in my home." At that moment, a guard burst through the doors, breathless. "Sir, the perimeter is breached." Gunshots thundered outside. Every head snapped toward the entrance. Shadows moved behind the glass walls. Men in black stormed the corridor, firing at guards, shouting one name. "Find the girl. Bring Lila out." Chaos erupted instantly. Damian turned in disbelief. "They're here for you?" Lila swallowed hard. "I told you. They want me alive." "Why?" he demanded over the rising noise. She hesitated, then finally admitted the full truth. "I stole something from Vargas. A ledger. Proof of killings. Proof of the politicians he bought. Proof of the cartel operations he runs under wealthy umbrellas, including some tied to your empire." A violent hush fell. The revelation hit like a grenade. Rowan lunged forward. "She's lying." But Damian didn't believe him. Not anymore. "Lila," he said, "where is this ledger?" She locked eyes with him. "Hidden. In your mansion. I plan to give it to you." But I needed to be sure you weren't part of it. Rowan's mask cracked. Rage flickered. And Damian saw it. Saw the betrayal he had sensed for months. You. Damian whispered coldly. Rowan pulled a gun. The hall erupted. Damian shoved Lila down just as Rowan fired. Guards tackled Rowan. Shots rang out. Windows shattered. Smoke burst across the room as Vargas's mercenaries pushed inward. Lila crawled toward Arya, who had been hidden behind a pillar by a guard earlier, and shielded her with her body. Another bullet ricocheted off marble near her head. Arya cried into her shoulder. Damian saw it all. Saw the woman he thought was a liar. The woman he thought betrayed him. Throw her entire body over his daughter without hesitation. He charged forward, pulling them both behind a fallen table. His eyes burned, not with anger now, but with clarity. You protected her, he breathed, shaken. Even now. Lila nodded frantically. I would die before letting them touch her. Damian exhaled, a slow, broken release of denial he'd been choking on for weeks. You've never been the threat, he whispered. You've been the target. And that acknowledgement shifted everything. Gunfire roared, but Damian's voice rose above it like steel. Everyone stand down. His guards formed a wall. He stepped forward into the smoke, glaring at the intruders as they hesitated under the weight of his presence. I am Damian Blackwood, he declared, and no one touches her. Not in my city. Not in my empire. The intruders froze. Backup arrived. Mercenaries fell. Rowan was dragged away in chains, exposed as the traitor. And silence slowly replaced violence. When it was over, Damian returned to Lila. She held Arya tightly, shaking from adrenaline and fear, but alive. Arya buried her face into Lila's neck and whispered, Daddy, she saved me. Damian's throat constricted. Before the entire empire, before every advisor, guard, and servant, he extended his hand to Lila. Stand, he said softly. She rose slowly, tears falling silently. Damian lifted her chin, forcing her eyes to meet his. No more lies, he said. From either of us. Lila nodded. I'm sorry. He shook his head. You saved my daughter. You exposed my enemy. And you survived a world designed to break you. He glanced at the crowd, then back at her. From today forward, he said, voice resonant, you stand under my protection. Not as a nanny, not as a fugitive, but as the woman who earned her place here, with courage, not deception. And before everyone gathered, he took her trembling hand and whispered, Lila Stone, I choose you. Her tears fell freely. Arya hugged both of them, and the empire bowed its head, not in judgment, but acceptance. What began as a lie became the truth that remade them all. Moral lessons. In life, people are often judged by the mistakes they make while trying to survive, not by the courage they show when everything collapses. Lila's journey reminds us that real loyalty is revealed in storms, not sunshine. And sometimes the person everyone doubts becomes the one who saves the whole house. Never underestimate quiet strength or the power of truth spoken at the right time. If this story touched your heart, please like, comment your thoughts, subscribe to Nanny's Folktales, and share with someone who needs a reminder that redemption is always possible.